Hey, and welcome to this week's Madness and Mayhem. Just checking you can hear me. And I've got my, whatever it's called, microphone turned on. I have, so fingers crossed. All's good. So we're going to be just doing a little bit of a deep dive into Islam, and then we're going to look into fasting. So we're only covering one thing this week, and I think it's an important thing. And actually, I started. Okay. So I was going to say I started kind of gathering information last week, but that's not technically true. It's something that I've been looking into, trying to understand for quite a number of years. But last week I was like, okay, well, I think we probably need to have this conversation now. And I really started to kind of look at things in earnest. And obviously here in the UK, we've just had two very prominent reasons to make this episode. So we've had the poor gentleman who was stabbed walking his dog. So my apologies because I forget the names of people. And then we've just had the train attack, and neither are supposedly terrorist attacks, even though, while they were brandishing their knives, they were shouting Allahu Akbar. So I don't know any British Christians who perhaps would be shouting that, or British Jewish people or atheists who would be shouting that phrase. So the media's way to get around the fact that this was a jihadi terrorist attack is to then say, well, they're British born, so they can't be, considering Ruka Bender, however you say his name, was British born. So just because somebody's born in Britain, it doesn't mean that they aren't radicalized. Also would like to preface the fact that for those of you who are watching this and maybe not watching any of my other shows, I'm not anti-Islam or anti-Muslim. I have issues with extremist Christians, and I've spoken about them quite a lot. I have issues with extremist Jewish people. I spoke about them quite a lot. I have issues with anybody who's an extremist, regardless of religion or no religion. But what we haven't done is had a proper conversation about Islam, and I think this is important. Everybody's terrified to talk about Islam, and I think this is where we are then at a disadvantage, like a real disadvantage. Some of the things that I have uncovered in my many years journey shocked me to my core, but the same as it did when I was watching Finding Out Jesus, I was a human trafficker. So all of those things, we should note that in order for us to be a cohesive society and decide where we want to go, what we want life to look like, we have to start having open and honest conversations about the things that aren't good. Nobody should be don't put baby in a corner. None of us should be put in cupboards, and we shouldn't be made to feel like we actually can't have a conversation about something which is of vital importance. As it stands, our way of life in the United Kingdom is under threat, and it has been for many years, but it is increasingly being targeted, and we are being written out of existence. We are being purposely targeted and purposely removed from the conversation, and we think it's important that we actually look at things from a historical standpoint. So I absolutely adored history as a child. So it devastated me to find out that 99% of what we learn is complete bullshit, right? Because I loved history. I loved learning history. Similarly, I was very interested in religious studies as it was back then, rather than religious education. So I think it was religious education, but when you did it like at a higher level, it became religious studies. Very much in line with my one fascination with psychopaths. All of it is around what makes humans tick, what makes somebody want to do the most atrocious things because a book says so, right? And that is the fundamental point of any fundamentalist. A book says this, so I'm going to commit this atrocity. So at what point does your humanity become overridden and you become so indoctrinated that you will commit horrific acts because of 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 year old book says so, right? Because that's the crux of it. So I'm not an atheist. I'm not agnostic. I'm not attached to any religion at all whatsoever. They are all about control, regardless of which religion you are. And Christianity has some very, very crazy religions that are okay, right? So I say okay. I don't think what they do in some of the Christian religions is okay. I don't believe what they do in some of the Jewish religions are okay. There are things that are going on in Islam which are not okay. But just to kind of get out of the way, like, I don't believe in any religion. So I think one of the things that has probably stinted this conversation quite a lot is the people who are having these conversations do have an affiliation with an opposing religion, right? So you get lots of people who are Jewish talking about all the shit that's going on in Christianity or in Islam, and you get Muslims talking about all the shit in Islam. Definitely not talking about the shit in Islam. Talking about all the shit in Christianity and Jewish, and so with it's very difficult to have a proper conversation with somebody who has that bias, right? They will not be able to look at things from somebody else's, the bias is strong when it comes to dead people writing in books, right? And it still confuses the shit out of me, but that is somebody's beliefs and we need to at least honor those. I'd also like to premise before anybody starts calling me, I always get called a racist, it's fine, which I think is hilarious. So I get called a racist because I'm white, right? So that in turn means you literally used my race to call me a racist. Anyway, so let's just reiterate, I have some Muslim friends. I actually have a Muslim person as my business coach, who I absolutely adore. So I quite happily handed over thousands of pounds to learn from somebody. So the religion's not an issue for me. Some people's interpretation of the religion, very much an issue, which is why we need to have this conversation. I also don't care what the color of your skin is. I don't care where you come from. I don't care what you believe. If you want to believe this sky pixies, as Matt calls a big G when he's talking to me, right? He calls him, you believe in a sky pixie. I do. I believe there is something out there. I just take offense personally at having to use somebody else's interpretation. Like that, for me, diminishes the fundamental concept that we are always given by all of the big G's, is free will. Like, I have the free will to choose, therefore I'm not going to take what somebody else says as gospel. I'm going to read, internalize, analyze, see whether it fits. If it doesn't, am I going to kind of park it for a little bit, come back to it? Am I going to explore it more? Like, that's the point of the journey, is to evolve on. Hey, Pen, is to evolve and evolve your understanding. So just to get that out of the way before people kind of start, I've got Jewish friends, I have Muslim friends, I have Christian friends, I have atheist friends, I have agnostic friends, I have Hindu friends, I also have Sikh friends. So I do not care. Right? And actually, somebody who I used to be very close with, but not anymore, just because of distance. we literally share the same birthday, me and this lovely Muslim who escaped, right? So one of the things that I do, okay, so I do need to lay my bias on the table. One of the biases I have against Islam is I've come into contact with lots of people who've escaped the fundamentalists to come to our country so that they can practice their religion in a peaceful way and not be stoned to death and not be set on fire and not be raped, right? So that's like all of the women who escaped that horror to come here for us to now import it, right? That's my bias. Okay, let's throw that out. I have a anti-abuse of women bias when it comes to any religion, to be fair. But it's also important that we have conversations about children being raped in Catholic churches, the children who were raped and murdered, and infants who were abused and brutalized by the nuns in Ireland and the United Kingdom, right? So we have conversations around other religious institutions and the way that they treat people, but at the moment Islam is a taboo, and it needs to not be. Right, it absolutely needs to not be, and hopefully, as we go through today's show, you'll start to. And I've kind of broached this multiple times, it kind of offhandedly when we've been talking about the grooming gangs, but hopefully, you'll really start to understand why the Muslim community specifically will not speak up. Like they just won't. And so we have to be united in our voices, and we have to be fearless in the face of the extremists, right? So we talk about, you know, like so many people are like, oh, you know, well, I will get a gun and I will stand on the front lines, but people won't stand up about this. And they won't even post a tweet in case the police come, right? So how are you going to face down your enemies, right, if you won't even stand up, like on your own? Like, I mean, like on your own, not in a group. Like I'm on my own. I don't only have conversations when I'm in a group or in a crowd, or like I will. This is important. If you decide that you're on the side of humanity, you have to start talking about this in a non-religious fundamentalist way, for those of you who are Christians and Jewish people, right? Hey, Carl. Okay, so now that I've premised, and everything I say is going to be taken out of context anyway, and, you know, I already get death threats and people, you know, hoping I get raped. I don't care. Let's just throw that out there. You know, because if I die, like I'm dead. Like this, I just like, I'm dead. And, you know, I feel bad for my family maybe, but like, you know, somebody telling me like, I hope you die. I was like, well, I mean, at some point I'm gonna, so, you know. And, you know, coming from somebody who tried to kill themselves, like the death threats, like I already tried to do it to myself. So I think your threats don't mean anything. So that's just, there we go. And obviously they threaten, you know, we'll beat you up, we'll rape, like being there, like let's just, like, if you've already experienced that shit, like I ain't afraid of it. If it happens, it happens. I don't want it to happen again, thanks very much. Just throw that out there. But let's call a spade. Like if I get killed, I get killed. Like I ain't gonna care anymore. Like people get so stressed about death threats. Like when you're dead, like it ain't gonna matter. And you could always get hit by a bus tomorrow. So I mean, let's not get hit by buses. I love how my conversations always take we start up here and within 15 minutes, we're all the way down here. But this is keeping it real and unscripted, but I do have lots of bullet points. Okay, so the first thing I want to share with you is that's not working. So like I mentioned, I have been investigating Islam for a number of years, number of years actually, but actually kind of watching things in earnest, collecting books, which I still need to read, trying to understand, right? We have to take the time and opportunity to understand somebody's bias. Let's put it like that, right? We have to understand somebody's bias. Why is somebody doing the things that they're doing? We've already been into, the fact that I say we, the West, capitalized on abusing and brutalizing people in the Middle East, right? That was done on purpose, joint MI6, CIA operations, in order to stop Russia's advancement during the Cold War. Right, so that's an important piece of contextual information. That the major resurgence of fundamentalist Islamism is not just something that happened; it was something that was forced to happen by our successive governments, right? And if you grew up in an environment where your family had been brutalized for generations, because that's where we are now, it's 2025, so at least 3 generations have been brutalized by the funding, USAID, UKAID. You would harbor ill intent towards the individuals who were doing it. Okay, that's recent history. But obviously this is something that has been going on for 1,500 years. This isn't new animosity. It isn't. And it's difficult for somebody like me to understand that because I have no religious upbringing, right? I was always on the outside. My mum was a Catholic, my dad was a Protestant. They left religion. They just didn't discuss it. Like my mum she says she's not involved, but sometimes she was brought up by nuns, right? So she was in a not a nunnery. She went to Catholic school and stuff like that. So my dad, they just didn't give a shit. It was a boy, right? Boys don't tend to. And then, he went in the RAF at 16 and then saw very horrific things. And that very quickly, my dad is an atheist, right? Like I always was for many, many years. So I didn't have a religious upbringing. So it's always confused me how somebody can, again, do all this because of, in essence, a book, regardless of which religion they come from. But we need to really have this conversation. So in the recent past, right, in the recent history, when all things had kind of actually really started to settle down, after World War II, we started ramping shit up. Right, because we needed the war, right? We needed the military-industrial complex needed some way to get money. The entire thing is about financial gain. The military-industrial complex were not impressed when World War II was over, and from the minute World War II was over, they started the push against Russia, who were an ally. And I know, like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend when you're in, like, a global catastrophe. I get that. but the dust hadn't even settled before we started funding and funneling money into these very tribal and unfriendly regimes, because stupid people in suits believed that they could control them, right? So it was just means to an end. And what happened? So last week we talked about, was it last week or the week before, we were talking about unrestricted warfare in China. So what you'll see is that the Islam attack on the West is just using the very same tools and techniques that were used on them, right? So that includes propaganda, like media-based propaganda. That includes infiltration. That includes, something that we definitely didn't do, which is, womb jihad, which is literally where you just breed out the population. So they literally took all the methods that we were using, and let's remember, like, Germany was the dry run to see what tools and techniques work to completely indoctrinize a nation, and how can you the most effective methods. And since the Nazi Germany dry run, you then had China with Mao, then we had other examples of how to do it. And for anybody who wants to know how effective it all was, we saw it in COVID, right? So we got to see it in COVID, the fear-based propaganda. And for many, many years, people were saying, I would never have been a Nazi. And just cast your mind back to the way in which people behaved in COVID at the threat of a potential virus that they weren't even going to die from. Now have that in your mind, where you are being bombed, starved, family members being raped, systematically wiped out. So I just want you to have that in the back of your mind. If you're ever trying to figure out, like, why are these people so hell-bent on destroying us? I mean, there's a reason. Islam is a way in which to join people together. So I'm just thinking, because I think you all need to watch my brainwashing video. You've got to, like, people don't get it. Like, it's not, like, none of this is a surprise at all. It's all, and they did loads of brainwashing research after World War One, after World War One, they really started to do it to figure out how you brainwash and how people can escape brainwashing. And what you'll find is religious institutions do all 7 things that effectively brainwash people perfectly, right? So religious institutions are the perfect mind control agencies, right? They absolutely are. Okay, so first off, I'm just going to kind of rewind to 2021, and when we did the show called Whose Plan, and I introduced 3 ancient cults, right? One of those ancient cults is called the House of Wisdom, which came from Egypt. And this rose in 1005 AD under the 6th Caliph of the Fatimid dynasty, Al-Hakim bi Amir Allah, whose notorious brutality and eccentricity earned him a title of the Mad Caliph. So they traced their descent back to the Prophet Muhammad through his daughter Fatima. They are Shias, and they covered North Africa, into the Levant, in Sicily. Cairo was built primarily as a royal and military city full of palaces, gardens, mosques, and barracks. This is where this cult kind of developed. So why am I bringing them up? Right? Well, I'm bringing them up because their plan, right, over 1,000 years ago was the abolition of private property, the elimination of religion, the elimination of nation states, a perfect class of men and women to help shape the world and elevate to 4D, right? So the same things that we see the WEF populate, like pushing now, those things were actually embedded into that cult. There was 3 religions. There was 3 cults that all kind of shared it. There was also the cult of Mithras and the Builders, but they all had this as their what they were working towards. Yeah, I mean, so, well, it was Mohammedan, then Muslim, then Muslim. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know what the I couldn't figure out why it got changed. Right? They changed words, but nobody knows why they changed. Well, we do. It's to erase history, isn't it? Okay, so all the way back 1,000 years, that was being instilled, right? So that's what we were talking about, like in 2021. So what we're seeing now, even though we think it's new, like, oh my God, like the WEF, they're crazy. They wanted to do this after World War II. No. Over 1,000 years ago, 3 different cults all had this as their goal. And one of those was in Egypt. The other is Armenia. And then the other one, let me just double check. It's just based on the stuff from back then, but isn't really old. Okay. So have that in mind, right? So what we're seeing it's not new. It's just repackaged, because this is why it drives me crack. Okay, so you will have to bear with me because I've been making notes from various documents, books, videos I've watched, so it may not always be in an easily digestible kind of following flow. I've tried to join it together as best as possible. I also tried to get all of the information, so I've been kind of compiling it and getting all the transcripts, and I thought I'd be able to just kind of like dump it into Grok and ask Grok, like, these are my notes, can you just flesh it out? And he just couldn't do it. Kept having a hissy fit, kept losing half of the stuff. At one point I just had an entire chat which was just full of X's, like that was what got churned out. So I broke Grok properly this week. So you're just going to have it from my actual raw notes, which will take you all over the place. So my apologies in advance. Okay, so we have apologies, it's not in chronological order. So we have the Barbary Wars, which is the African Muslim pirates, and they use the sword, something that's known as the sword verse, which I do have potentially. I think I got it. Oh no, there we go. Which is fight the people of the book until they pay tribute and feel themselves humbled. So people of the book are Jewish people and Christian people, right? So the sword first is what's known and used as the key reason for the violent based jihad. So there's multiple different ways that so asymmetric warfare with regards to how jihad has been used now. So because we did that to them in the 40s, 50s, 60s, right? So, and let's not forget that actually Hitler and the Arab world were like besties, and they had good old convos, and there's lots of Muslims who have Mein Kampf, and that was a key thing. Like, when the IDF are going into Gaza and they're like checking the houses for bombs and Hamas, and there's like Mein Kampf on bedside tables, right? So they were besties. They've got the same my enemy is my friend would probably be the best way to come at it, with regards to how the Muslim world and the Nazis just, and people don't talk, you don't learn that in school, do you, that Muslims and Nazis were besties. Anyway, so because they were good friends with the Nazi party, they obviously also got an inside look into how the kind of propaganda, manipulation and all of those things were going and being used. So, but the sword verse is the thing that has always been what has driven the actual war-based jihad, right? And then also now transmuted into, well, we have to do it in any way possible. So it's no longer just by, knife attacks, driving into people, blowing people up. It's also through, subversive means that we don't see coming. So it was also used by the ambassador. So when the kind of Barbary Wars were going on, the American president of the time, was it Jefferson, who was the ambassador to the US ambassador was like kind of chatting away, and he's like, okay, so why are you doing this? And he literally, the Barbary pirate ambassador person literally recited the sword verse, right? The reason why we are attacking your fleets of ships, why we are trying, taking you as slaves and raping you, and because at this point, just to kind of put it in context, because the US had separated from the UK, you had to fend for yourselves, right? You didn't have the British Navy to fight the Barbary pirates and enable the trade routes. You kicked us out, and then you had to fend for yourself. So the American First War was actually against Muslims. Let me just delete that random person. So from 600 AD all the way up to 1800, including what's going on now, they were fighting to destroy the people of the book. Just because we'd stopped, right? They hadn't. So it's really interesting that, if you've ever watched any films or any like TV shows, and they're all like, oh yeah, well, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Like the Americans say that, and the UK say, oh, we don't negotiate with terrorists. But we do say, we do give like Hamas like recognition that they now have a state. We do give billions in weapons to Turkey who fund Muslim-based terrorist organizations. Like it's complete bullshit, this whole we don't negotiate with terrorists, because they do, and they give money and arms to these organizations, and then these organizations have spent 1500 years trying to wipe us out, and we wonder why they're trying to wipe us out. So what was interesting that I hadn't considered with the whole Belt and Road Initiative, which isn't just Africa, it's across the Middle East as well. So when we recognize how technologically advanced the West is and was, I say was, compared to where the Middle East and Africa were, because they are very advanced now, because we've been giving them lots of money and technology for a very long time. So they needed China. So they needed China as much as China needed us. So we've now got another team up, right? It's like, if you ever seen any of those Marvel films where you see like good goodies team up and like baddies team up, right? But it's not as simple as UK are the goodies and America are the goodies. It's not. Like, our government, successive governments have done horrific things. However, we are being invaded and targeted. So we are definitely victims of our own government and other people. So it was the Belt and Road Initiative we need to think of as a mutually beneficial agreement between two powers. So we have China as a superpower and the Islamic world, the Islamic world as another superpower of 2 billion people who are hell-bent on overriding the West. Right, so we have China's asymmetric warfare, and then we also have the Islamic world's asymmetric warfare. And people can talk about, oh, well, you colonized all you fucking want. Like, everybody was fucking doing it. Like, everybody was doing it. We were just really good at it. Right, from a teeny tiny island, we were really good at it because we were advanced we were technologically advanced. And that enabled us to be better at it than those who were not as technologically advanced, right? But obviously China has been stripping us of our industry, of our finances, of our capacity to economically support ourselves in any way, shape or form for a very long time, because our country and our government has allowed it to happen, right? So we've been sold to China. And if you didn't watch that episode a couple of weeks ago, you might want to have a dive into it. And actually today there was the security, I will get my words out in a minute. There was the Joint Committee on the National Security Strategy all about China. So that was today, and that's available on the government's YouTube channel. So I haven't watched it because it only kind of finished, I don't know, maybe an hour before the show started. So I haven't. But China, with the collapse of the spy case and all of those things, so China is subverting the West, the same as Islam. So we've got that team up. And actually Russia is also very heavily invested in the Middle East and in Africa as well. So that doesn't mean they are besties, right? It doesn't mean they're besties. At some point, once their common enemy, which is us, has been wiped out, they will turn on each other, right? Because they both have very different views. I mean, at the moment, China is organ harvesting and abusing the Uyghurs like non-stop, right? And because Islam is anti anybody except Muslims, then they're not going to take China as besties, right? And then obviously Russia is heavily Christian, so it's China is falling into both. They're all falling into the same trap that MI6 and the CIA fell into. That they all think they can fund these things and then use them. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Like, people aren't stupid. Okay, well, I mean, people are stupid, but hopefully you know what I mean. So we also have to remember that at the moment we have Qatar and China who are spending billions sponsoring liberal arts in USA universities. They are spending billions in the United Kingdom, and China is the one who funded and who heavily funds the WHO, who launched the COVID bioweapon, who is subverting, like they launched the technological attack on the United Kingdom with, you know, hate K, was it hate K vision? And Huawei and all of those things, right? So they are using their soft power, right? So they are using their money and their influence, both Qatar and China. Like, so we're not talking about the money coming from Saudi Arabia in through the back door. Everybody is so obsessed with the Jews controlling the world that it's driving me fucking crackers. Because you're being psyoped. And I'm not saying there's not bad Jews. I'm not saying there's not bad Christians. I'm not saying there's not bad fucking Satanists. But to say one religion is in control of anything just proves how retarded you are in your deductive reasoning skills. Like Sherlock Holmes, yes, Arthur Conan Doyle might have actually been Jack the Ripper, and so probably not the best example, but Sherlock Holmes would be shaking his head in just anyway. Okay, so I've mentioned before the real reason. So, you know, we have people up in arms in the UK, like, why isn't the Muslim communities speaking out against the grooming gangs? Why aren't they, you know, if everybody doesn't believe it's okay to do this thing, then why aren't they speaking up? Well, one, a vast proportion of imported Muslims, and probably quite a high percentage of Muslims who've been here for second and third generation, actually believe it's okay, right? And so for many of us who recognize it's quite horrific and also understand that, yes, incest also happens in white families. This isn't incest. This is not what we're talking about. We are talking about the specific ethnic targeting of white, predominantly white, the 97% of the rape victims of the grooming gangs, you know, torture, rape, murder, drug abuse gangs, were white. So why? Firstly, Muhammad encouraged it, specifically encouraged it against white people. So I was not aware, but for the first 10 years of Muhammad's, I don't know, attempt at power, or, you know, he was kind of creating his religion after being visited by Archangel Gabriel in the cave, who told him to kill all the dogs and all the rest of it. You know, he was actually preaching peace and tolerance, and so that's where those peace and tolerance stuff comes from in the Quran. Is the first 10 years, that is what he was preaching, and in those 10 years he had 100 followers. That was it, 100 followers. And then he decided to make friends with thugs, pirates, raiders, barbarians. And in the next 10 years, he had thousands and thousands of followers. I'm just trying to find the numbers. Because it's all out of... Here we go. So for the next 10 years, the entire Arabia followed, right? So for the first 10 years where he was preaching peace, which is where all those peaceful stuff comes from. And so what happens is they talk about he made a pact with some Jews in Medina, then he slaughtered them, which is where the verse "fight the people of book until they pay tribute and find them feel themselves humbled" comes from. So he was different in Mecca and Medina, but actually there's lots of controversy with regards to there's no evidence that he really was in Mecca. The creation of the Quran and the Hadith happen in the same way as the Bible, right? The New Testament. It appeared 200 to 300 years later, right? It was a collection of written word with, my granddad said, Muhammad said, right? So it isn't, as I was led to believe, that it was Muhammad's written word, right? That's what I was always taught. It isn't. It was written 200-300 years later, in the same way the Bible was written 300 years later. They decided what was going to go in, what was going to go out, right? But the reason why white people are being targeted is because supposedly Muhammad had to encourage people to go and raid, and the way that he kind of encouraged them to do it was he literally told them, well, the white people, they want it, they want it, they're whores, they are it's not bad to take them as slaves. They are nothing. They are dirt. They are second-class citizens. That's all they're good for, right? So that is what was taught and is still taught, right? So this is why it is imperative the grooming conversation actually looks at Islam and Muslims, because this is fundamental to some of the teachings in the Quran, that the people of the yellow, i.e. yellow hair, and or white people, depending on the interpretation and the translation, that's us, right? And it is also so much us because the Vikings, who were raiding, raping, and capturing and enslaving people from the United Kingdom, were then taking us to the Arabic lands and selling us as slaves, right? So we had I didn't get taught that at school when we did all the shit about the Vikings in any way, shape or form. And we did the slave trade. I'm sure you all did the slave trade. But I didn't get taught that the Vikings used to fucking take us and sell us to the Muslims, right? I didn't even realize the Vikings went that far until I watched the series The Vikings. And I freaking did. I loved history. And for those of you who are outside the United Kingdom, this is what we get taught in history over and over and over and over again from primary school. We get taught about the ancient Egyptians, we get taught about the Vikings, we get taught about the Romans, we get taught that Britain had an empire and we were fucking evil. And that's about it, really. And then World War II. And it's just the same shit over and over and over again. But at no point was I ever told the Vikings used to come and take us and sell us as slaves. And obviously slave comes from Slav. It literally comes, that's where it comes from. But it's important that we understand that actually in the Quran, they are taught that we are less. We are subhuman. And anybody outside of being a Muslim is subhuman, but we are a special kind of uselessness in their eyes. So it will be completely galling to them to know how advanced of a nation we were, right? And not just us, the West, right? With regards to, we became technologically advanced and they didn't. But we're subhuman, right? So what you get is just human nature. Is you get jealousy, anger, and all of those things, right? If you are taught that somebody is subhuman, and then you go to their land and they've got like fucking running toilets. We've got like flushing water. We've got running water. We have like all of these things. And obviously the Romans even had fucking hot baths and all of that shit, right? So it's not like it's only just us. But it's not something that nomadic tribes, they didn't build infrastructure in that way, right? And they haven't evolved. It is still the exact same way of life from 1500 years ago, right? They haven't evolved. And I say they as in all encompassing, but obviously it's not all encompassing. I'm talking about the ideology hasn't evolved in any way, shape or form. No, it did. And then it reversed, right? Because we forced it back. What I also hadn't realized is that the rise of Muslims and Islam and the destruction of the Christian empire, which is what was, Egypt that's where the Coptic Christians were. Like the vast majority of people across the Middle East and Africa, they were Christian. And not because of the American missionaries, because that came later. Let's do like history. But Muhammad didn't rock up until like early 600, right? 630 something. Okay. So before then, it was Christian. Because Judaism never really is there. Oh, I mean, is it offensive? Let me see if I can turn it off. There we go. Okay. Thanks, Pen. I can't hear it. So, okay. So before the Muslims were the Christians, because Judaism didn't ever really kind of take off in the same way, especially as they kind of like, there was the whole Roman tussle. And so it never really had the same spread. So in order for the Muslim world to spread, they had to kill the Christians or get the Christians to convert. And similarly with the Jews, right? So you don't, they don't, it's the very confused individuals on the left somehow think that Christianity was Europe. Like that's it. So Christians were in Europe and the rest of the world was just this untouched. Nobody existed, right? But at the same time, they also think that there were these, I mean, the people, like, I don't even understand how they think. I can't even comprehend how they are so disconnected from reality, because they must on some level understand that there were people in the Middle East. And people were in Africa because we were enslaving them. But what religion do they think they were? Or like I can't even wrap my head around how they must not do any kind of joined up thinking. Like that's the only way. They must have like, this is what Africa was, this is what the Middle East was, this is what Europe was. And they've got all the different times all mixed up. Whether they think maybe the English Empire invaded, I don't know, Africa and Egypt when it was ancient Egypt. I can't figure it out. Maybe I need to find a confused lefty. I need to find a confused lefty and ask them. And maybe their head will explode, so maybe I won't. Okay, so anyway, so it was obviously before Muhammad, it was like lived in. People like genuinely lived there, like, oh my God. Because if people didn't live there, like, where did the Muslims like come from? Like, it was not like Muhammad just like Muhammad didn't just appear and then like he grew these people. I mean, he just grew them out of the ground, right? That's what happened. He just walked and these people just appeared because there were no people there before. Of course, there were fucking people there before. So anyway, the way that they got people, so they were Christian, so they were destroyed, right? And at pain of death, threatened, raped, abused, enslaved, tortured. If anybody wants to know what was going on, you need to go and look at what happened in our very recent history to the Yazidis, right? And the very horrific things that was done to the Yazidis by Muslims. Because it's the same, like they haven't evolved in the way in which they interact with other individuals, right? Which is also confusing. For some reason, the very confused left think by getting on a dinghy and you get off at Dover, all of a sudden you're westernized. I don't, maybe there's like a time warp barrier. Like I don't know. Like you know, you come from a country where it's okay to stone people, behead people, rape people, and if your daughter's raped, you murder your daughter because you know she was raped, so she's in the wrong, and it's your duty to put her in the ground. And you do horrific things, beat the shit out of your wife, rape goats, like all of that shit's going on. Then you make it to Europe, jump in a dinghy, get over Dover's white cliffs, and now you're wearing a top hat and tails, speaking the Queen's English. Should I say King's English now, right? And you are high society. Like it just, I mean, who knew? Maybe I need to get in a dinghy, and I would stop swearing so much. maybe I'm the uncivilized one, because I haven't come through the back door of the United Kingdom. It has been a horrific education for decades, Linda. You are absolutely correct. Okay. So at the same time, so because we you know, so the Romans were advanced, the Greeks were advanced in their thinking, in their structure, in the way that they I mean, don't get me wrong, they like killed Socrates for thinking, right, and teaching people to think, and he was killed for corrupting the youth. I've literally got a book from, I think it's 130 years ago, that's got like the trials of like some of the ancients, and so I'm like, I opened it the once and like a page looked like it was going to fall out, so it's like I need to find it on archive.org and maybe I'll read it. But so he was murdered for corrupting the youth. He was executed for corrupting the youth. So we need to, okay, so before the Muslim Empire, there was advanced civilizations across the Middle East, right? because, you know, we have this joke, what did the Romans ever do for us? Oh, they made us straight roads. You know, and so, you know, the Romans didn't just do that in the United Kingdom. And the Greeks didn't just, they weren't, when we talk about Greece, we mean like the Greece of then, which was Egypt, right? Alexandria was in Egypt. The Coptic Christians were in Egypt, right? That's where the Copts come from, and they changed the name, so then it became Egypt. So in order for the Muslims to take over and be strong, they do the exact same thing they're doing right now, which is they destroyed the churches, they destroyed Alexandrian Library. Constantinople, before it was changed into, I forgot what it's changed to. That's in Turkey, Istanbul. That was the new center of Christendom, right? After Constantine, right? So we always think of like Christianity in Rome and Italy because we have the Vatican, right? But actually it was moved from Rome to Istanbul, what's known as Istanbul now. So Turkey, which is, you know, proper Muslim zealots rocking up in Turkey as it stands. That was the heart of Christendom, and it was flattened and destroyed. And what has happened since we've imported people with that mindset? Churches are burning down. Look at what happened in France. Churches are routinely burnt down. They walk into churches and behead fucking, I'm going to say priests, and I'm probably going to get the wrong terminology because I don't know which one's which, right? Priest, fathers, friars, I don't know, whoever they are, behead them, right? Because that's what they do. It's not. And when I say that's what they do, okay, we have to separate the rabid mob from the integrated, and those who escaped the rabid mob because they quite like the first 10 years of Muhammad's teachings and then kind of ignore the rest. And for anybody out there who says, well, they're being disingenuous, Christians who believe in both Old and New Testament, right? Because they do, but they're supposed to. They don't follow all the, like, you know, let's stone the adulterer. So there's some pretty fucking horrific stuff in the Bible, right? And you can choose to be a good Christian by following the stuff that's good, right? So you can be a good Muslim by following the stuff that's good, right? You have free will. And yes, the teachings are, you know, in the Quran are, you know, Muhammad's word. And they say it came from God, but it didn't come from God. It came from like the Archangel Gabriel. So like an intermediary. Similarly, the Bible was written by prophets or people who had conversations with people who were knocking around in Jesus's time, right? So neither one of them are from the horse's mouth, shall we say. So when I'm talking about they, I'm only talking about the individuals who believe this, right? Let's have some water in my nice Christmas. It's Christmas already in Katie's house. The Woodland Jacks household. Okay, so we were presented as promiscuous. We were presented as the prize. And actually the Ottomans, and I hadn't realized this, so the Ottoman Empire, obviously that kind of evolved later. The leaders of the Ottoman Empire were very, very pale, because they took the slaves and then bred with the slaves. And actually the majority of the leaders were following the line that they were pretty freaking white by the end of the Ottoman Empire. So the Dark Ages arises at the same time with the Islamification of the Middle East. Because the seat of knowledge, the seat of power, the seat of philosophical, there we go, philosophical thinking, and all of that knowledge and understanding and experimentation and all of that was destroyed. Oops. One of the things that so that's one of the reasons why the Muslim community won't speak up, right? Is to go against the grooming gangs, is to go against the word of Muhammad, right? Because it says it in the book that it's okay to do this. You know, I've often wondered, like, how are the wives like okay with this? Because they're not stupid. Because the book says it's okay. And I would say some of them are like, I know it's awful to think this, but at least I'm not being raped and beaten, right? Which, you know, many of us would probably think the exact same thing in that situation. The other reason is they have something called the apostate, which means if you leave, then you die. So very much like in, you know, many militaries, early, you know, like World War I, like deserters, is you were shot. You were executed for deserting. Till even now, if you deign to leave the religion, that's it. And if so I'll just drop that link again of I think there's 14 different YouTube videos in a kind of playlist that I've called kind of Understanding Islam, and I've like been kind of compiling them for a while. But I've also got, like I said, books and podcasts and stuff like that, like audio books. And I've had conversations with my Muslim friends too. I'm like, I just don't get it. Anyway, so I've dropped those, right? So the apostate is still very much alive, and there are many individuals who leave Islam, become an ex-Muslim, and they are murdered. Like, they are murdered. And I've been following, if you follow me on Twitter, if we're mates on Twitter, you'll know that I follow some of the accounts that are fighting for a free Iran, right? Fighting for freedom in Iran and putting their head above the parapet. And it's every week or so, at least once a week, there's news of somebody in Iran who was murdered and tortured, and at least one every single week for speaking up, right? And I get very angry when people are saying, well, why aren't people? They are fighting and they are dying for their freedom. We aren't there completely yet. So they are fighting. They are fighting against the same fucking regime that we paid in the 80s, right? Which brought in the radical Muslims and Islam. But so in that playlist, there are, I think there's 3 different women who escaped. I think 2 have escaped Gaza, Jordan, because it was one's ex-Palestinian. So there's multiple viewpoints, and also some, you know, ex-male Muslim scholars, and so there's good conversations. And also I think I've got Yuri Bermanov in there, who's the Russian defector, talking about how they were going to infiltrate the West, because that's what they're using. They're using those KGB, CIA, MI6 tactics, right? So it's important. Anyway, it's worth kind of like just having it on in the background. But the common thought is that had they not had the apostate, the religion would have died out, because it is not... There's no advancement, and it's all about, you cannot question it at all. But as soon as you start asking, but this kind of doesn't make sense, like, why would we do this? Like, aren't they our friends? Like, is it okay? Like, as soon as you start questioning those things, like, shit gets down. And actually, one I think a couple of the videos are from the son of one of the co-founders of Hamas as well. His story is, they're all pretty brutal stories, to be fair. But what I hadn't realized is that in Saudi Arabia, they still have public executions, and people who try to leave are publicly executed, and very much like we used to do a couple of, maybe 100 or so years ago. We were still kind of we're still doing public hangings, but people weren't really going. It wasn't like an event. And the whole phrase hangover is because people used to go to the public hanging and get absolutely pissed and then be useless the next day, right? Cool fun fact. So again, it's that we have evolved out of this barbaric nature, and they're still trapped in it. Right. So it's like us having conversations with our ancestors who didn't, it was still legal to rape and beat your wife until the 80s in the United Kingdom. So let's just put it into perspective with ideologically advancement, and people were still being hung for being homosexual in the 60s, right? So it's not that we are miles ahead on everything, but there's just a huge disconnect between where we are with our ethics and morals and where they are with their ethics and morals. So back to the apostate. Children are taken to go and watch these public executions. So you grow up knowing that if you try to leave the faith, that's your life. If you go against the faith, that's your life. If you question the faith, that's your life. What happens in the UK is people get shipped back to those countries. And this is where the forced marriages happen. This is where the genital mutilation often happens. This is where the honor... I'm laughing at honor killings, not because of honor killings, but because the conversation I had on social media. The honor killings actually has to happen in the United Kingdom. Like, it's not they don't just ship them over there and it happens. It happens in the United Kingdom. And there's been like I'm pretty sure it was like a 200% rise in the last few years. Funnily enough, in the last few years, right? So why was I laughing? I was laughing because I posted one of the videos. I actually posted the video on Facebook, which is is the interview with the niece of the Intifada founder, right? So Solomon. So she was talking about the honor killings. She was talking about the forced marriages. She was talking about all the different types of jihad, and the public executions, and the fact that she grew up as a Palestinian with the sole purpose to destroy the Jews, and then once that's done, destroy the Christians. Hence River to the Sea, right? Hence first comes Friday, first comes Saturday, then comes Sunday. Like, hence all of those slogans that people kind of band around in quite blatantly in London, is that she was brought up to despise the Jewish people, and know that her sole purpose in life was to give birth to as many children as she could, to sacrifice them in the destruction of everybody else, because they needed to bring about the global caliphate, right? That is what she grew up believing until she started to question things at 16. And then shit went really bad for her, as it usually does. So I shared that to say, look, when we have to be mindful that when we talk about, free Palestine, right? This is what they're being taught. And I've mentioned this before. We've shared videos of 7-year-olds talking about wanting to behead Jews and being happy that they, killed a Jew. And I'm not saying people in Israel are not also sometimes violent, horrific, and awful. And I'm not saying there's nobody in Gaza and Palestine who aren't good people. That's put it contextually. However, I mean, she would say that her words are, nobody in Palestine deserves to be alive, right? That's literally what she's saying. I don't know everybody. I've never grown up there. So I shared it, and somebody jumped in my feed in a comment saying honor killings has got nothing to do with being a Muslim. I was like, fucking ass, mate. So that, it absolutely has. This is coming from somebody who is an ex-Muslim who's saying it is a thing, right? So the person who said it wasn't a thing is not a Muslim Western person, right? Telling me that the person whose lived experience is wrong. And I said, look, I think you just watch, like it takes like an hour and a half, right? Watch it. And they came back saying, I'm actually doing a degree in Islam and Muslim something or other. Honor killing is not part of the Muslim religion. And I said, well, did you watch the video? I don't need to watch the video. Okay. So you're learning the UK-based indoctrinated information that's funded by China and Qatar that are telling you that this is not the case, right? And the actual person who's lived it was talking about how she was watching executions in Saudi Arabia as a child while being covered head to toe in the hijab, right? You're saying that that's not true because your book says it's not true. Like, this is the mentality, right? So that was one person on Facebook who just refused to watch the video, right? On X, I posted it. And they said, look, public executions, if they leave the faith, we're asking why the Muslims won't stand up for the agreement. Like, this happens. They get shipped over there. They get executed. Like, the apostate is real. Like, this is what's going on. Somebody on my X thread, but that's not true. Like, you need to watch the video. I don't need to watch the video. I know that it's not true. Right. Because you live in the United Kingdom and you are definitely not a Muslim. They are so against just seeing something from a different perspective that shatters their worldview. I resorted to just sending an eye roll emoji. I just couldn't. I really couldn't, right? So this is what we're up against, right? So we have the Muslim communities who, if they're good Muslims, like nice Muslims, they will not speak out because they will be killed. Like, they know that. They know that because they probably know somebody it's happened to. They probably know family members. They probably know, they escaped that fucking life and came here, and they know it happens, right? So that's a very real thing. And I've mentioned before, like, I accidentally watched that poor woman who was stoned to death. Well, she was being stoned to death while she was set on fire because some man randomly accused her of blasphemy. Right? So she was in the streets in, I can't remember which country it was because I watched it the entire thing is playing out in my head in Technicolor, where she was stood in front of the police. She was trying to get into the police station, and one man just shouted blasphemy at her. You know, like we see those terrible, like those old films, and like blasphemy. What is it? The joke ones, Monty Python, right? Just shouted and pointed. She was on her own, right? And she was walking, and she was, and he shouted blasphemy, and all of a sudden there's like hundreds of men, and she runs to the police station, and then by the time she gets to the police station, there's thousands of men. And she gets into the police station, and the police try to save her, and they get on top of the roof. They literally like lift her onto the roof to try and save her life. And the police station is overrun. They pull her off the roof, and she lands on the floor. Then I don't even know how she managed it. She managed to escape and run. She was freaking fast. And she ran, and then they started throwing stones from afar, and then she fell, and then they surrounded her, and they were completely rabid. And then somebody set her on fire, and I heard her. I honored what she went through by not turning it off, right? And I was not looking for that in any way, shape, or form at all. And I will never share stuff like that because I don't think that's respectful. I honored that. I watched it because that person went through it, but I wouldn't share somebody else being like, snuff films are illegal, right? Let's just kind of throw it out there. But that's the mentality of the individuals who are coming here, right? So we have that pack mentality. So there's also something called takeya. I probably pronounced it wrong, so I do apologize. And that literally means they can lie, steal, cheat, fake being friendly. And this is where it gets a little bit they can fake being friendly and good, and at some point they will fulfill the jihad that they're supposed to be doing. And this comes from another story in the Quran where there was Muhammad had tasked somebody to go and murder somebody, and he'd said the only way I can do it is if I lie to them and I become mates with them. And Muhammad said that's fine, as long as you do it, right? And so that's where Takea comes from. And so this is where we are with Sadiq Khan, 100%. He is not good, people. And whether he is indoctrinated or he's just not good people, who knows, right? But he's not good people. But it's part, again, it's part of the Quran. It's part of what Muhammad teaches. It is okay to completely just pretend while you are the minority, and then you go all out when you're the majority. And this is why we are at that tipping point with the sheer number of people they are importing. Yeah, I mean, all the teachers need to be fucking sacked and imprisoned, the same as the doctors. There was a Muslim Brotherhood document which literally talks about how they need to destroy the West. And if you haven't read it, you need to read it. The Muslim Brotherhood are a terrorist organization, and it's really interesting because when you watch I can't remember, I think it was somebody from Saudi Arabia, one of the kind of I don't know whether it's in the Saudi Arabian government, people like that saying, we don't have the Muslim Brotherhood here, right? No, they don't, but they fund it everywhere else, right? So we do have more terrorists in the United Kingdom than they have in the UAE and Saudi Arabia and other places, but they are being funded by those states, right? So let's not allow their propaganda to say that we have the problem. We fucking do have a problem, but they're funding it because their ultimate goal is still the global caliphate, right? Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't be under Sharia law when you went to Saudi Arabia. Because if they were not all in on the global caliphate, then they would not be living by that in their own country. Right? So again, this is the fucking disconnect between what people see. Oh, Dubai, it's beautiful, it's lovely, it's welcoming. They impose Sharia law. They want the global caliphate. Like, that's not welcoming. That's fucking wolf in sheep's clothing, and we're too dumb to notice. It literally says there must be no churches in the Quran. That's in there, which I was not aware of. It's literally in there. So when we're saying, why are they burning all the churches? Oh, well, wait, it's kind of it's in the book. It's in the book. So all of these attacks, like it's not the individuals who are carrying out these terrorist actions are not coming up with these ideas on their own. They are following the book, right? That they are indoctrinated into, and indoctrinated into in a very distasteful way, right? But again, let's it's not just these organization, it's not just this religion, right? We have fucking Jews raping 3-year-olds, we have Catholics fucking raping children left, right, and center, we have Mormons beating, terrorizing, and raping and fucking in bed with the CIA and MK Ultra experiments. So this is fucking get rid of religions. But I've been saying that for a very long time, so this is not me saying anything new. Absolutely, Linda. Teachers aren't experts. In the United Kingdom, they do a degree and then they do a PGCE. So you can do a degree in English right, for example, and then you go and learn how to teach, right? Your degree is reading and being indoctrinated by the books that you are given, and then you regurgitate that same shit. And then the curriculum, which we never used to have, which we do have, the national curriculum dictates which books you use, dictates what's taught, it dictates how it's taught, and the exam boards make sure that only those things are taught, because if your school doesn't have an X rate pass percentage, then you ain't getting your fucking money. And teachers are now performance related pay, which they absolutely fucking should be, because it's the best way to get rid of shit teachers. But because teachers are performance related pay, there's no way they are going to teach anything that falls outside of that exam. 100%. And that happens whether it is primary school, secondary school, college, university, sixth form, any of it. This is what you must be taught. These are the prescribed materials that you're taught, that you must teach from, and therefore everybody's going to learn the same fucking thing. And this is why they're banning social media for under 12s. This is why they are saying you must not use AI. This is why they're saying, you have to be very careful of AI, because it's just a more advanced search engine, and people just for some reason believe it. Like, if you ask an AI, like, it just makes shit up all the fucking time. Out of nowhere, it doesn't know where to get the information from, and it just, I don't know, make this shit up, right? They call it hallucinating, but it's just fucking lying to you. So, but it's literally in the book that you must destroy the churches. It's fucking sad. Okay, so something else that I hadn't realized is that in America, like, we have had bad education in the United Kingdom. We have. We've had far better education because we've had a longer history. It's like harder to hide stuff because we get to go to the museums and we get to like kind of see the stuff. And so you have, that's one of the reasons they needed to wipe out the older people in COVID and stuff like that. And that's why you have to have the wars, right? In order to reset history, you have to wipe out generations that could be able to say, wait a minute, what they're teaching you is just bullshit, love. So that's why wars, COVID, diseases, all of that, stick your old people in a home so you never see them, never speak to them, you're too busy, you're working, all of those things. So we have a very altered history. But I'm always shocked by what is taught in American schools, because obviously it's only very recently that actually we've parted ways, technically. It's only like 250 years, is it? Like, ish. It's not like thousands of years. And yet what you learn about like our shared history, do you even learn the shared history? You do learn some. You must learn some, because of what was said in one of these the conversations. But your understanding of shared history is bonkers. So I was unaware that you're taught in America that the Crusades was just the Christians being fucking insane. Like, they just woke up one day and decided they were going to go and murder loads of Muslims. Like, and so I kind of thought, wait a minute, maybe it's because I loved history. Maybe that's why I knew the Crusades was King John the Lionheart. Maybe I knew the reason why we had the Knights Templar and why all of that kind of happened, and the Crusades happened as a result of the Christians doing pilgrimage, who were being raped, brutalized, murdered, trafficked, all of that stuff. Maybe the only reason I knew is because I loved that stuff. And, you know, I've mentioned before, my mom used to be like, there's a fucking encyclopedia. Go read the encyclopedia. You know, you've got a question, there's the book, right? And so I said to Matt, I literally said to Matt the other day, so why did the Crusades start? And he was like, well, because like the pilgrims were people who were pilgrimaging, like the Christians were getting like raped, brutalized, murdered, and they did it to enable them to have safe passage into the Holy Land. I was like, okay, so it was definitely taught in school because Matt was not into history. And he's not, like, I love him, but he doesn't have the same passion. So maybe that's why we get on so well, right? So you guys, the fact that I found out, you don't even know that. Like, any of my American mates who are online now, like, is that, like, I suppose it would depend on your age as well, probably, because they have to do it in stages. But I think the other reason why they couldn't teach that here is because it's Richard the Lionheart, and it's the St. George's flag, and like, so there's no, they wouldn't, you couldn't get away with messing with that, I don't think. I mean, but they're probably doing it now, right? Because the St. George's flag is evil, and you know, we were the colonizers, so they're doing it successfully now because nobody speaks to each other. Why the Oxbridge, Eton, Harrow, Bun Boys letting it happen? Oh, because they're getting paid to let it happen, and they don't care. They don't care. They're going to get well. They're too dumb to realize that they are also just cannon fodder. They're useless, as well. But they think they're like above, right? So they see us as less, but their puppet masters will see them as useless and useful idiots as well. So they're too dumb to realize that they'll also get sorry. Then they're not the chosen ones either. I just couldn't believe that. So what I also hadn't realized, though, pre-Colomini, homosexuals were like, it was fine over in the Arab world, which probably explains the whole little boy rape that happens. Okay, so Pen is American. Okay, so she didn't know that the Crusades was in response to the Muslims raping him. And you call yourself a Christian fucking nation, right? Founded on, it's crazy. So they erased it quite some time ago in America then. Wow. Wow. So yeah, homosexuals was pre-tolerated before Colomini in the 1980s, and yes, so this probably relates to the little boys are trafficked, and so that's the other thing. When they come over here, they don't have to have boys anymore. But also, if you're living over there, you were probably abused as a child as well, right? So it's generational. But little boys are sold quite often, not little girls. And little girls are raped, but little boys are sold as playthings. And I've seen documentaries on the little boys who are much like they are over here, right? But it's not something that, how do I put this? So over here, if we find out somebody is abusing children, we will have, okay, just theoretically with our justice system, right? Police, investigation, prison, right? Over there, that's not the case. So it's an accepted part of the culture. That's the phrase I was looking for. It's an accepted part of the culture. So again, they don't jump on a boat and then it's not there anymore. So what we have to consider is Islam and the Muslim faith compatible with democracy? In its fundamental makeup, no. Neither is Judaism or Christianity either. Let me just throw that out there. I don't think any of them are, right? But what we've seen in the UK very recently, so Libya 2.0, right? So we see block votes which have nothing to do with the United Kingdom and nothing to do with constituents. And that's what was going on in Birmingham, right? So people were put into the Houses of Parliament. People became MPs with the sole purpose to free Palestine. It's got nothing to do with the United Kingdom at all. We have a mayor in the United Kingdom who does not even speak English because they were voted in by bloc, right? We have people in the civil service who have been refusing asylum for Christians who are attempting to escape persecution in Muslim countries where they are persecuted. And I've just been through quite a few things that tells you the reasons for that. And they are denied asylum by Muslim individuals in the civil service, right? So it's shared. Let me, oh, wait a minute. Do I still have I shared a image of a tweet earlier today from X. Okay, yeah. Let me just share it. Okay, so this person, Abu Gaza, is army command retired combat veteran, and now he's a contractor, right? So we all know about contractors. Nigerian, right? But what he states in his bio is Islam first, then Nigeria, right? And that's what we need to remember, is for those who have grown up in isolated sectarian communities, and I mentioned before, we have places in Birmingham which are 97% Pakistani Muslim. Like, they are growing up as Pakistani Muslims. They're not growing up as English people. And then this is why they become disillusioned and they don't feel like they fit in England, because they haven't grown up in England. They've grown up in a microcosm, a displaced microcosm. And when they attempt to leave that teeny tiny displaced microcosm, they have no idea how to, they're not part of the British society, because they didn't grow up in British society, right? And we had the Somali gangs who we had the Somali grooming gang, where in their culture they again same. So just because they're Somalis, didn't know nowhere did it mention their religion, right? In Somalia, they're probably Muslim. So we have, and this is role reversal of Christianity and Judaism. A lot of Judaism is that they integrate with the society they're in. So if I went and moved to Dubai, I would be living under Dubai rules, right? I wouldn't go and start a UK in Dubai. If I moved to anywhere in the world, I would be moving there to become part of their culture, not bring the United Kingdom with me. And I know it's quite difficult, and I know that when you get like pockets of the same culture, it's bound to happen, right? But this has been decades of creating these actual non-British regions inside the British Isles. I mean, some of the things this guy says, he's like, here we go. Look, I mean, he literally supports Khamenei, right? So, but Nigerian. So, do we obviously have the Christian massacre in Nigeria, which Trump is now kind of speaking about, which has been going on. And if you've been kind of like internet buddies with me, I've been talking about Nigeria for 5 years, and that's only because I started really talking about stuff like this 5 years ago. But it's been going on since 2009, which is a long time. These Christians have been raped, murdered, persecuted, destroyed, right? But that's what he thinks, right? This is the mentality. It's not, I'm going to integrate, is I am going to stay true to this 1,500-year-old way of thinking, and everybody else must submit to it. And that's what Islam means. It means submit. And if you don't submit, you die, right? That's it. If you don't submit, then, I mean, if you're female, you'll be brutalized first. Again, I urge you to check out what happened to the Yazidis. So there are some in that, I just need to pre-warn you, in that Understanding Islam playlist, who these are the ex-Muslims who will tell you there's no such thing as a moderate Muslim, right? They will tell you that everybody says they're moderate, they are under taqiyya, right? That's their words. I would say that's probably a bias because of where they grew up. So they didn't grow up in the West, they escaped to the West. So you will have a very different viewpoint. I mean, they grew up believing like, this is what I have to do, I have to subvert. But those who are in the West, who grew up as part of westernized communities away from the pockets of so do I think Shabina Mahmood is a moderate Muslim, or do I think she's taqiyya? I would say taqiyya, right? Because of where she grew up in the UK. Do I think Sadiq Khan is practicing taqiyya, or do I think he's a moderate? I think he's practicing taqiyya, right? So the way to figure it out is where were they? Were they growing up in were they like, there was a couple of Muslim families inside a majority British village, because they will have probably grown up, the children will have grown up alongside westernized children. But actually some of the conversations, you'll see that they had, so she was saying, I had little white Christian friends, and every time I went home I was told I wasn't allowed to be friends with them. So it will depend on their, when they relocated to the United Kingdom, was it their parents or the grandparents, or but I would say the people we have in power, Takaya. The Green Party deputy leader, Takaya. I mean, he's not even practicing Takaya. He's an open jihadist. The Jeremy Corbyn's counterpart, she's an open jihadist, right, with what she's preaching. But Mahmood, 100% Takaya. So it is scary shit when you consider that. Like 100%. You get, so it's, and what we have in the United Kingdom is huge pockets of segregated communities. So it's not like it's from like one area. There's multiple areas where they are fully segregated communities. We talk about Sharia courts, like there should not be Sharia courts operating. Like that's not UK law. Like it shouldn't be operating. There should not be areas in the United Kingdom that the police won't go, and they won't go into certain areas of London. They won't go into certain areas of Birmingham or Bradford or Leeds. So those areas, anybody coming from there, like I would, sorry, but you have to be suspect, because it's a belief, right? It's not. And there was reports done with regards to de-radicalization. So you can't do it because it's the same as psychopathy, right? Why would you change? Am I back? I got a message saying, oh no, your stream's not stable. I think I'm back. So why would you change the way that you believe about something if it's giving you everything that you want, right? And for the men, it gives them everything that they want. When they're alive, they can just take it and it's fine, because that's what Muhammad said it's okay to do. And when they die, they're going to get all of these things. And what's really interesting is that their whole concept of what happens when they die is very similar to Valhalla and what the Vikings were preaching, right? So when whoever, multiple people were talking about the fact that there was 10 years of kind of peace, like peaceful things he was preaching, and then he joined the pirates, the thugs, the barbarous lot, and started raping and pillaging his way across the Middle East. Is around the same time they're kind of and then we have the Vikings, right? And we have the book written after they've already started, the Vikings have already started kind of selling the white slaves, right? That happened the book was written after, the Hadith was written after. So I don't know why it didn't occur to any of the people I was watching or reading that they've like, it's literally the same. You go to this place and you get all the women and you're glorified. And I was just like, that's like Valhalla. They just took it. Why not? Worked for the Vikings, right? So what they'll say is that they're all doing Takea, right? But we do have to bear in mind that they escaped very horrific situations. So it is going to jade you. And then when you hear 76% of Muslims in the United Kingdom don't believe there was rape and murder on October the 7th, that puts it into perspective the number of Muslims in the United Kingdom who are probably not actually on board with British culture. So 24% may not be practicing Takea. And a vast majority support Hamas. Like, I think it's around the same sort of percentage support Hamas. Right? Which means they are supporting the ethnic cleansing of the Jewish population first and the Christian population second, while living in a Judeo-Christian country. This is why this is important. And when we're importing more and more and more, and when we have a very clear 2 terrorist attacks that are being reported as probably mental illness, we'll get mental illness, right? Not terrorism. When we have the establishment covering to keep the anger, to keep the division, because they need the civil war, right? And actually, somebody pointed out the other day, it's not a civil war because we're not going to war with our own people. We're going to war with the fucking invaded party, right? We're already at war. We are being taken over. And that's literally what they're saying. That they are going, and you can watch and they're not, lots of them are not even quiet about it. They have YouTube channels, imams who have YouTube channels who are telling us this. And it is racist, or I have Islamophobia for repeating the same things that they're saying, right? So one of the things that taught is the Quran is the word of God, and rejecting it is rejecting what God says, right? So this is why they'll say that there's no such thing as a moderate Muslim, because either you believe that everything in the Quran is the word of God, or it isn't. It can't, and that's what I say about Christians, right, as well, and Jewish people. Either that is the word of God and you do everything, i.e. you need to start stoning those adulterers, or you don't. So that's, bearing in mind the people who are saying this are ex-Muslims, right? They've come from that situation where it's been that is their bias. However, we know there are lots of Christians who don't go around stoning adulterers and take the stuff that was preaching love and tolerance. So I personally believe Muslims can absolutely do the same thing. I think it's bullshit to say, Islam's the religion of peace. Like, that's bullshit, because it isn't. because the vast majority of the success of the religion was through war, whereas Jesus built Christianity on peace, love, forgiveness, right? So there was a different creation story to the two different Abrahamic branches. So numbers wise, there were 17 million blacks enslaved under the Arab Empire, and only 12 million across the Atlantic slave trade, and only 388,000 went to the USA. Under 2% of whites actually owned black slaves. And also, if you didn't know, it's actually a black man who earned his freedom, because back originally they were indentured slaves, the same as the Irish. And it was a black man who earned his freedom, who had his own black slaves, who were coming up to their 7 years of freedom. And he went to court to say, I own them and I own them for life. So maybe the next time you find some black person saying, well, you had slaves, be like, well, it was your own fucking, it was a black person that created the law to keep black slaves forever, but didn't do it for the whites. So the Irish was still kind of indentured, because I think he probably would have, maybe he wasn't allowed white slaves because he was black. I don't know, but it was black on black, which actually enabled black slaves to be kept for life. That was not a white thing. That was like a black guy did that. Abolition was completely rejected by the Muslim regions, and it only stopped after we destroyed the Ottoman Empire. So those awful British people who destroyed the Ottoman Empire, displaced those horrible Palestinians, stopped slavery. In what I say stopped, it's still rampant. It's still going. Oh, yep, off the internet again. Nope, back. Obviously not allowed to talk about those things. So why was it rejected by the Muslims? Because it's in the book. It's okay to do it, right? There were 1.2 million white slaves in the 1600s. There are no African slaves surviving today from that time, because they turned the men into eunuchs and murdered them. And what I've got under there is my notes while I was kind of like listening to this stuff, is hence the war in Africa, right? They are just wiping them out. They're not enslaving them. They are wiping them out. Men, women, children, gone. There's also, I can't remember what it's actually called, but there's also a place in Gaza, which is literally, I think it translates to slaves or blacks or slaves, like something along the lines of like, you know, this is where the black people live, and it's called like slave something. It's pretty bad. Obviously, yeah, I know. Sorry, Pan. I keep going when I'm talking about things I'm obviously not allowed to talk about. So we had Muhammad had a 6-year-old wife who consummated at age 9, supposedly. However, again, right, it was written 300 years later. So was that then changed? Did it happen? Who knows? But it's in there. So consummated at age 9, which means age 9's fine, right? In their in the book, it is fine for you to have a 9-year-old wife. So that's why it's okay to come into the country and then grab yourself a 13-year-old off the street. And I've mentioned this before, the Pakistani grooming gangs, they would target predominantly from 13, because that was the grey area in the law, right? So not stupid. So they don't know the origin of the Quran. It was passed down verbally, same as the Talmud. The guy, I can't remember his name. Let me. I bought his books actually. I need to read his books after. This guy. Here we go. Raymond Ibrahim. I really like him. He was saying Muhammad, the whole idea of Muhammad is very much like Robin Hood and King Arthur. There's not necessarily evidence that there was a Muhammad, in the same way Moses, like I mentioned before, there's like 10 different Moseses, and then all of a sudden there's like one. Jesus, maybe lots of his stories are recycled from other places around the world. It's the same stories being used. So again, all of these, it's not to say that something caused a shift in what people were doing, because all of a sudden, people are doing completely different things that they were doing before. So it's not to say that something didn't happen, but I think he was talking about the fact that Muhammad as a name doesn't fit, and the language is wrong. So he kind of goes into the whole Mecca, Medina, the language that recorded the information doesn't match the language that was used in Mecca. So the whole peace stuff, he says like it's just not true, because it doesn't fit, it doesn't make sense. It's and so very much like when the Hebrew, the 72 books, the Hebrew, which one was it that Ptolemy had done? I can't remember whether that was Old or New Testament. I think New Testament, wasn't it? They translated from Hebrew into Greek, and they were kind of saying, and this is why it's all been mistranslated. And classical scholars are like, well, actually, that's not the language that was used. Like, Hebrew wasn't written, so it would have been Aramaic, right? So there's the same like kerfuffle with people trying to cover their tracks and make it look like it came from there, when it actually then doesn't match all of the other kind of writings and scriptures and how people were documenting information. Now that we found that sort of stuff with the archaeological digs, is like a disconnect between, they used this thing, and now we know that it was never written in that language. It was always written in a different language. And talking about language, with regards to the English language, so we know that the English language was created as a method of control, right? We've been through that before. But what I hadn't I'd heard it mentioned, but I hadn't really kind of twigged, is that, people often say that the English language is lacking the capacity to talk about spiritual concepts, right? Which is very strange. If we came from, the whole branch, we came from Sanskrit and the Indo-Aryan language, right? So if it filters all down, but the English language really struggles with spiritual concepts. And I was like, it's strange that happened. It's not strange that happened. It's happened on purpose, right? So we had a technological advancement, and as you lean towards technology, you move away from spirituality. And the easiest way to stop people being able to comprehend spiritual concepts is by not having the actual words to explain it. So how can you, we're having these conversations about consciousness. How can you explain consciousness when you have no language that enables you to explain it? Because you take it away. It's so much fuckery, like thousands of years worth of fuckery. What also I didn't know is that there's new versions of the Quran, very much like we've got new versions of the Bible, where they're changing and whitewashing like core texts. So if somebody is like grown up completely Western, right? They are completely westernized. They're not part of these pockets. So these are like the 24% of individuals who kind of are not all in on Hamas in the United Kingdom. They very well may have no idea of this history, because we don't get taught this history. So why would they be taught this history? They may also have absolutely no idea that there were these two different Muhammad versions, that there were, and they've been whitewashing the atrocities. So may very well be very confused by the fact that they find their Muslim brethren targeting white people, because it's not in their book. And I've seen, and I've never understood why I've seen these kind of backbiting conversations on X where people are saying, it is peaceful, like I'm reading my book. And then other people are like, oh no, it's not, because this, and they're like, but that's not there. And I'm like, well, is what? But it's the same fuckery that happened with the Bible when they took out all the key bits of information that was going to advance the Christian nation past the brainwashing of the church and past the indoctrination of the church, into growing into you being your own spiritual powerhouse, which is what Jesus was teaching, or supposedly teaching, as part of his cult. But they're not even learning it, right? So fully westernized Muslims are not learning about Takaya, are not learning about you must like wage jihad in any way possible. They do make the distinction that the Old Testament, where most of the really kind of gross stuff is, which is obviously why you think, oh, Jewish people, Christians evolved away from that. They didn't. But so then, Islam hasn't. So there's two religions that are quite, dark ages, as we would say. So the Old Testament does conceptualize it against specific enemies of the time, right? There are named enemies of that time. So I'm no longer fighting the Philistines, right? Or if I'm in England, there are no Philistines, right? So that's there in the Quran. It doesn't distinguish between time periods, and this is really important. It is that they must fight the infidels forever until they have submit or been eradicated, right? So that is whether that takes you 10 years, 1,500 years, 2,500 years, and they're going to keep going, right? So if you are fully believing in the Quran, and that it's, you must believe that the word, then it is your duty to completely eradicate anyone who is not a Muslim. Like, that's written into the text, which is terrifying. Also, with regards to the whole Mecca Medina thing, they were saying some of the sword verses were actually now being dated earlier than some of the nice stuff. So again, but it's all fuckery, right? So they just kind of like make shit up, the same as they make shit up with the Bible and the Torah. I've got this multiple times. I mentioned that before. That's me talking about the Vikings. See, because I remembered some of this off my head, right? So jihad, so Mein Kampf and jihad both mean my struggle, which I fucking interesting. But with jihad, it means war and holy war, not struggle and strife, right? It actually means struggling for the it's the struggle is not an internal struggle, it's a struggle against the infidels, right? So that was made very clear from multiple people, and supposedly it's very clearly laid out in the Quran. Jewish kids are being brainwashed really badly to think they're the chosen ones. 100%. They do. They believe they're the chosen ones. It is like everybody's being indoctrinated by their book, because the people who are in charge are just after money and power, and they don't care how they get it, and we're nothing. But this is what's so sad about the entire thing, is that if they just stepped away from the indoctrination, they would be able to see how Christians are being indoctrinated one way, Jewish people are being indoctrinated another, Muslims another, Hindus another, how every single religious group is being indoctrinated in the same way as the cult. Like, everyone's like, oh, it's Scientology, it's a cult. And I was like, well, they're being indoctrinated in the same way as every fucking else. It's about control, it's about power, and okay, so they have to have a USP, right? So we're going back to sales and marketing techniques, and I might need to kind of pause in a minute and go to the loo, because I don't think I can cross my legs any much longer. I wanted to try and get to the next bit in whatever the word's called where you have a break. Okay, so they're all being indoctrinated in slightly different ways. You need a USP. So what's a USP? Your unique selling point, right? So this is sales and marketing. I do. If you want to be like the best salesperson in the world, just study the religions, because they have got it nailed, right? So if I am selling, what can I sell? Anything. Oh, my brain. If I'm selling this like felt tip pen, right? And there's lots of felt tip pens on the market, right? But I want you to buy my pen so that I don't go out of business. I have to find something that makes my pen unique. So maybe my pen, maybe before, right? If we think about like the evolution of writing implements, used to be a quill and you dipped the ink, right? So the first person who created like a cartridge, like everybody was like, whoa, that's crazy, that's insane, let's all go get these cartridges. Like, I'm not going to get like covered in ink, don't have to do the dipping. And everybody kind of like rushed over to the person who was like cartridged. And then we went from cartridge to like, we got like biros, and everyone's like, oh, we went away from the fountain pens, right, to the biro. Oh, I don't even need to blot the paper, this is amazing. I don't need to like shake it, or like, then everybody like rushes. The unique selling point of this pen was it was like, it's all contained, it's amazing, it's easy, you can put it in your pocket and you're not going to get the ink splodges. You can have 2 of them for the price of like, you have like 12 of them for a price of 1 pen. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so then the evolution, then we get gel pens. Oh my God, the ink, it flows even nicer. And so the evolution is now we get these pens, right? These are the, paper mate paper joys. They're not round, they're triangular, which means they're really easy to hold. And actually they're you know, they're, because you used to, if you were a kid who, you know, had spaz hands when you were holding it, like, you know, holding it like a weirdo, they used to put a triangle thing on your round pen, and then Papermate went, fuck it, let's just make triangle pens, right? So everybody rushes to triangle pens because they're so much easier to hold and they don't give you hand cramp, and you don't have to buy those stupid rubber things. You're no longer getting the stigma, right? That's the USP. You can hold your pen for hours without the stigma of looking like a retard. And you know, we have to kind of be careful because I grew up, that's the word, right? So that's it, like, without being identifiably unable to hold a pen. There we go. So the next evolution, I don't know, ink that lasts 3 times as long. Who knows? Whatever happens next. A pen that is a biro that writes like it's a fountain pen. I still use a fountain pen because it's so much nicer, but I keep losing it. I have an ink pot and so if you do use fountain pens, you can get like a fill up cartridge. Anyway, so that's religion in a nutshell. Literally, they have to find their unique selling point and then they go hard at it, right? Because fountain pens haven't gone away. They're still there. Round biros haven't gone away. They're still there. So now we have these 3 pens fighting for survival, like we have 3 religions like main religions fighting for survival, right? So now you have to double down, right? Because the fountain pen people need to kind of like, they need to like come up with something because they are losing the pen race. Like when I was at school, you still had to learn to use a fountain pen. You still had to use a fountain pen in order, like in your school books, right? You don't have to use a fountain pen anymore. They're losing the pen race, and it is damaging our children's handwriting. I tell you, I'm a pen snob. I know, it's so much nicer, right? And journaling is a phenomenal therapeutic technique, and if you're going to journal, then you need to make sure you're using a pen. That just it's a whole different experience. Anyway. Right, so we've got these 3 pens battling it out. So now the fountain pens need to come back hard. They're luxury, right? That's the same as religion. The Christians are the most high and mighty. But maybe it's just because I've met mine much more, right? And I've told you about my story, my that 14-year-old incident with my poor Sikh friend whose grandmother died, right? That's so it's just their USP, right? And until the people in the religions take on the core teaching of free will, which I don't think is in the Quran. I don't think that is from the sound of things. I think as soon as you actually from this, I mean, if you question any of them, then you get like piled in on. But free will is embedded into the Old and the New Testament. So I don't know whether it's in the Quran. By the sounds of things, it probably isn't. They probably realized, right? We can't have that because it can't be, because if you don't go along with it, you're going to get murdered. So yeah, it won't be in there. But if the Christians and the Jews actually take on board the free will, they will instantly know those 10 commandments don't mean jack shit. It doesn't mean you don't decide to abide by them because we have morals and ethics, But actually, the bedrock of the rules for both of those religions are instantly destroyed, because they are thou shall not. If I have free will, nobody can tell me what I can and can't do. Right? With this is why I fundamentally rejected any religion. Because when you kind of at school and they talk you religious education, they obviously, when you are in going through puberty, at the time you introduce those things, lots of people will then, then find religion in their teens. And obviously we see that after Charlie Kirk and the rise of pious Christians, right? War, that's what they're after. Anyway. So you're more likely, it's identity exploration. It's well documented that identity development and exploration happens during puberty. The reason why our teens are so mentally unstable is because we don't actually allow them the opportunity to go out there and explore and kind of figure out who they are. We demand that they do what we tell them, and until such time that we give them an opportunity to decide what they want to do for the rest of their life. And they've got no fucking idea because we haven't given them an opportunity to explore. And what I did was I kind of read the overview of many of them, and I was like, well, but if I have free will, you're telling me what I can and can't do, I ain't down with that. That is the biggest contradiction that should stop anybody in their tracks if they are paying attention to the words that they're reading. They just don't read the statistics with regards to the number of Christians who've actually read the Bible once is like less than 25%. Like way less than 25%, but I'm not going to, and reading it more than once is like less than 10%. And I think it's like way less than 10%. So they're not even reading the book. Like I attempted to read the fucking thing multiple times, and I just can't get past the clearly defined bullshit and contradiction. Which means it can't be the word of God, because if God is this omnipotent, all loving, right? He's all loving, all knowing, all forgiving. But I'm going to wipe out this lot of people for shits and giggles. I'm going to decide this one portion of people are chosen. I'm going to give women like this punishment for going against me in the form of horrific pain every month that we forget about. Horrific pain when you go through labor that you forget about. You fucking dumb shit, you do it again, right? Like how is that forgiving? Like it just isn't. Okay, so the job is, so jihad is the creation of the global caliphate. That's what jihad is about, and that will be created in multiple different ways. So whether it's propaganda, whether it's physical conquest, whether it's breeding out of it, whether it's like anything. So that's where the asymmetric warfare comes in. Whether it's people are earning lots of money in the United Kingdom and sending it back to other countries, whether it's they're sitting in fucking hotels and sending their money back to other countries where they are raping and pillaging and slaughtering people. So I've also said before that, in my opinion, Moses' conversation was not with God. It was with somebody from the Orion group. I believe Muhammad's conversation with Angel Gabriel was also somebody from the Orion group. if that kind of conversation happened, it's not all kind of made up. I mean, we got to like ifs, right? Jesus is, I mean, like he was fucking taking drugs, right? So who the fuck knows who he was talking to? And all the other prophets were taking drugs, and his mum was fucking, you know, from the age of 3, being used as a muse, right? Drugged up to her eyeballs. So we have, I would say, none of those 3 are kind of individuals I want to stake my fucking philosophies on. However, there are obviously some good teachings in all of the religions, right? Love thy neighbor is a great one. Be nice, be tolerant, be accepting. But they're just like general moral and ethical principles, right? You don't need to be bound by a book to be a nice person. Okay. There we go. I also didn't realize Columbus sailed west because it was dangerous. So the reason why they were going that way was because they're being, you know, the Muslim conquest, which again, not something we got taught in school, right? Yeah, I was just like, why are they going that way? Oh, you know, they were just exploring. No, we needed to trade. We needed to ensure that, you know, the goods that we were creating was going somewhere. It was because we could not go. And so this is why it stagnated. Anybody who went was raped, murdered, kicked out, pillaged, all of those things. And we stopped going, and we continued to evolve, and they didn't. And they didn't because their book tells them that this is the way, right? This is the way that we do things, and that's it. And when you have that, you can't, you know, evolve. We are the stupid second-class citizens, but they have mobile phones, technology, like fucking the printing press. They have, you know, all of that stuff came from the West, didn't come from the Eastern nations, the Middle East. It didn't come from Africa. So we had the Ottomans after the Crusades, and then when we destroyed the Ottomans, we reset the game board, which is why it's happening now, right? So this is light versus dark. This is the shadow versus, I don't know what's the opposite of the shadow. Anyway, so this is the fucking spiritual springboard going forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards. So this is where we are now. Right, so the destruction of the Ottoman Empire was the reset, and so now they're fucking trying to bring us to heel again because we can't because we've got the harvest now, right? So they had to be in control for the harvest, and it started in 2012. So they are losing. It's a battle for the souls. Also, Malcolm X, like, so I mentioned before that he had Mao's book, and I was always shown with Mao's red book, right? And I say always, like, there's lots of pictures of him with Mao's red book. He, you know, fighting Black Power and, you know, stop the slavery as a Muslim. He went and spoke and preached in a place where Black people are still slaves today and were slaves back then. So for all those people who are kind of pushing Malcolm X as this hero again, like, you need to go and fucking, he was communist funded fucking probably CIA funded individual designed to start a race war. Also, a little bit of extra history. We only ended the slave trade because the Saudis wanted their oil out of the ground, and we said no while they had slaves. So that's the only reason why the kind of slave trade. I mean, we'd already kind of done it here, but so we agreed to help the Saudis get the oil out of the ground if they didn't have slaves. Crazy, isn't it? And again, so the Saudis didn't have the technology, right? They had to come to the infidels in order to get the technology to get their oil out of the ground. And now look at them, right? But so when everyone says like the West stole the oil from the Middle East, no. You didn't have the technology to fucking get it out of the ground. So you needed us. And then, yes, of course, we did fucking cheat you because you'd have done the same and you do the same, right? So let's just, but that's why they didn't have the technology. I didn't know that because all we get told is you just fucking come over here and stole our oil. I was like, well, that's a bit fucking mean. It's because they couldn't do it because they didn't have the technology because they're living in the fucking dark ages still. Well, they were. Right? And now we just give them billions and billions and billions and billions. What do they do with it? They buy weapons and fucking rape and pillage, and they don't invest it. They say some people are investing it, right? Which is why they have people in charge. 1/10 of the population in London is Muslim. It only takes 1% to change things. That's pretty fucking scary. 1/10 of the population in London's Muslim. And I would say that statistic's probably out of date. And the Muslims in London, a lot of them won't be integrated because there's pockets. A quarter of the world is Muslim. Which is pretty eye-opening. 2 billion. That's the other stuff. That's the stuff I've said already. Okay. So I think, do I think we need to be terrified? I think we need to be vigilant. I think we need to not be sleepwalking into our own destruction. And I hope this conversation has kind of at least enabled you to no longer be hoodwinked by the very real beliefs of many of the people in the United Kingdom. 76% of the people with this faith in the United Kingdom have. Which is why there's 43,000 people on the 43,000 jihadis on the MI5 terrorism watch list. The vast number isn't because we just have extremists. It's because it's embedded in the ideology fundamentally. And there's only 24% of the Muslims in the United Kingdom who don't have this extreme ideology. So we have to have these conversations. Okay, so before I go, I am going to cross my legs because I've got 15 minutes before I get the cut off of my AI tool doing hard work for me. Okay, so unlocking the power of fasting for our mental wellness, right? Because everything's about mental wellness, and how we feel good in our body is always the extra bonus. So I was aiming to do another 72-hour fast. And I did a 72-hour fast about 2 years ago, and it was phenomenal. And I tried to do it again over the weekend, and I only managed to do 46.5 hours. So the reason being, I just where I am today with the sheer amount of work I'm doing and brain work and just stuff, is I actually didn't have the energy to continue. There was no way I could have gone into the next day and functioned. And actually, the last time I did it, I did like 2 days of work, and then day 3, I had an entire day where I didn't have to think or concentrate or do anything. And I don't have a free day anymore. I can't, so I don't. So I was planning on doing 72 days, but 46.5 hours is still good, right? So actually, if you just do 12 hours, if you do 12 hours, you still get some benefits. If you do 24 hours, you get some benefits. If you do 48 hours, you get benefits. If you do 72 hours, you get benefits. So what you'll probably see out there is, this is what drives me crackers with everything, right? Is they're like, oh, you need to do a 72-hour fast because when you do a 72-hour fast, you start your stem cells. Actually, a 72-hour fast is not appropriate for everybody. So what you don't get is people pushing these things, is they don't talk about the variations in age. They don't talk about the gender variations. And they also don't break down the benefits of the non-fast that they're pushing. So what I thought I'd do is I would very quickly run through the different fasts, who it's beneficial for, depending on your age, your gender, and what you're trying to achieve. So I've been having good old convos with Rock about fasting, because I was like, okay, well, this person says this, like, find me the research, right? Because the AIs are just advanced search engines, right? It's a faster way to find and compile information. But if you have your own information you want it to read, it can't do it. But that's what I'm discovering right now. Anyway, he's literally put in, disclaimer, always chat with a doctor before starting, especially if you have health conditions, right? I would say 90% of the doctors have no clue about fasting or nutrition, because it's a 2-week elective module in the United Kingdom's NHS GP training. So speaking to a doctor is not going to help you in any way, shape or form, because they don't fucking know about it. And what I suggest you do is take some of the information I'm giving you today, and then go have your own conversation with an AI and explicitly ask it to give you the research, is to use the medical journals, the medical databases, and the so do not use blog posts. You must use places like PubMed, medical journals, and I want the references, right? That's the conversations you need to have with the AI, so that you can kind of get the information, and you can always go and double check things, but you can start with the AI because it will compile things in an easier to use format, and then you can go and double check things and give yourself a deeper understanding. So first off, there are multiple ways to fast. So there's something called intermittent fasting, where such as 16-8, where you eat in an 8-hour window and then you fast for 16 hours. This is great for beginners if you want a daily routine, and it's sometimes called the lean gains method. And when I was doing intermittent fasting, this is the method that I was using, and I'm starting to do intermittent fasting again. But I started doing intermittent fasting because I don't enjoy cooking. And it was just, if I could just do 2 meals rather than 3, I found it much easier. So I'm going back to doing it because I find it easier for me. So I don't necessarily always eat in an 8-hour window, but I will make sure I go 16 hours in between. right? So don't panic if you eat like over 12 hours, as long as you get the 16 hours in between your meals. That's the key thing. And if you're like me, and you can have your meals whenever. 14-10 or 12-12, so slightly shorter fasts. And this is beneficial for women or those eating the easing into it. So if you're kind of going to start, if you're thinking about, I would quite like to do a 16-8, but I haven't kind of invested in fasting. Start with a 12-12, move to a 14-10, then move to a 16-8, right? So you can slowly adjust your digestive system. I tend not to do any easing. I just decide, let's go for it and go for it. I literally decided on Thursday I was going to do a 3-day fast, and then started like straight after my dinner on a Thursday. Then we've got 5-2. So you eat normally for 5 days, restrict 500 to 600 calories on 2 non-consecutive days. This is great for weight loss, and you can be flexible over the weekends, right? And that's what my big sister did. And my big sister was doing the 5-2 diet. She lost loads of weight, and she kind of introduced me into the whole intermittent fasting concept. I don't know, about 10 years ago. There's eat, stop, eat. So you do a full 24-hour fast. So you eat dinner to dinner, 1 to 2 times a week. This is for experience and a deeper reset. So 1 to 2 times a week, you do a full 24-hour fast. You can do an alternate day or a prolonged, so 48 to 72 hours. So you fast every other day or longer. And this is like advanced. This is like, don't do it if you've never done any kind of fasting, if you've got any kind of medical conditions, like don't just launch into it. I tend to just experiment on myself, right? Because when it comes to fasting, I was like, if I just feel shit, I'm going to start eating again, right? So as long as you know how to safely start eating again, that's fine. Like you're not like, nobody's going to chain you to a chair once you say, I'm going to try this fasting thing. I'm going to try 72 hours. Like I urge you to go past 24 hours. If you want to give it a go. If you do have medical issues, go and just, have the good conversation first. But the first 24 hours are always the hardest. But you don't necessarily need it. That's what I'm going to kind of show you. If you've never done any fasting at all, start 12-12, go 10-14, go 16-8, then maybe go 5-2, then maybe go the 24 hours twice a week, and then maybe just throw in a 48, and then once a quarter maybe do a 72, depending on you, right? There are different benefits to the different fasting levels. So fasting supports weight loss by reducing calories, boosting metabolism. You can lose 3 to 8% of body weight over weeks. It improves insulin sensitivity. So this is why it's really great for somebody who's got type 2 diabetes. It lowers cholesterol, supports heart health. It does a cellular cleanup. So autophagy kicks in after 12 to 16 hours. So reversing aging. So if you're doing, this is why 16-8 is quite good, because you're not kind of doing any kind of, you won't have like huge electrolyte drops. You won't kind of go into major kind of, you start to like, you get the kind of like, you get bad breath and stinky and all of that. You skip the bad side, and you can do daily kind of cellular cleaning. So over time, the intermittent fasting has a really good effect on your body. So that's why I did the 48 hours and then kind of gone into the 16-8, right? For your brain, it enhances focus via ketones as brain fuel, reduces inflammation, and inflammation is heavily linked with depression. And it's not that it's not causal. It's not inflammation causes depression. There's just evidence that somebody with depression will also have lots of inflammation, right? It's not causal. We have to remember we're talking about correlational evidence here. It boosts BDNF for mood and resilience. It also helps, you get growth factor comes out, so that stops protein being disintegrated, so it's really beneficial. So it's also linked to better sleep and stress management, right? Well, it will be with stress management and sleep, because it's all interlinked. Your body and your mind is one thing. So there's no point doing any of these if you're then going to kind of like gobble shit food, right? It doesn't mean you can't have shit food. I absolutely will eat. I love cake, I love ice cream, I love all those things. I just don't eat it every single day, right? There's no point doing something that's going to make you feel good to then just eat shit and counteract effects, right? There just isn't, right? So men and women are fundamentally different, right? There's no thinking you're female. There's no thinking you're male. It is male and female is not a thought. It's not a feeling. It is you're down to every single cell in your body is whether you are male or female. You are driven not just by hormones. Those three hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, both of us have those in varying degrees, but it's not hormonal either, right? It is your cells, your actual cells and your atoms, right? You are not the same. Still galls me that women is being reduced to lipstick, hair, fucking short skirts, right? And when they still do it with a fucking beard, right? Any woman who's growing a beard has endometriosis and they are in pain. So unless you are going through extreme fucking pain, then shave your beard, right? Anyway, so men can tolerate the longer fasts better, see quicker fat loss and muscle preservation due to stable hormones. They benefit from 16 to 18-hour windows for insulin and energy, right? So if you're a guy, the 16-8 or 18 6, yep, it is a great one for you to do. Women, we got to be careful, right? How many people talk about this? Women, you got to be careful. You got to know your cycle. So we have hormonal fluctuations, right? That's the other thing men don't fucking get, is just insane for 10 days. I think I'm insane for the entire thing. We're all our own beautiful kind of weird, but we need to make sure if you are premenopause, you have to be really careful when you're fasting and how you're fasting. So it can disrupt estrogen, particularly in the luteal phase. So that's your after you've ovulated leading up to menstruation. So it's better to do things like 14-10 to avoid stress. But if women do prolonged fasting, and if you already have anxiety and depression, extended fasting will increase anxiety and depression in 20 to 30% of people, right? So you got to be really careful. If you want to do a 24, 48 or 72-hour fast and you're female and you're menopausal, then the best time to do it is the day your period ends, right? Because it's before your huge estrogen surge. And actually, if you're trying to get pregnant, then it's a really good time to do it. And if you can do a 72-hour and you're healthy enough to do a 72-hour and you don't have to like run around after all the kids, or you don't have to go to work and all of those things, what will happen is you will do like a mass clean out of your follicles. You will have a much higher LH surge, so you got an increased chance of pregnancy. So it is that's when you want to do it. You definitely never do it in while you're going through your period, like at all, right? Your hormones are already fucked. You do not need to fuck with them anymore. So age differences. So young adults 20 to 35 is the perfect time for fasting. You have a faster metabolism, it's easier adaptation, great for energy and focus. So for kids, for young uns who are, university, studying for exams, like if you get in on fasting, you're going to get your brain's going to be working far more efficiently. Midlife, 35 to 55, helps to combat the slowing metabolism. 5'2" or 68, waives insulin. Women in perimenopause, shorter fasts help avoid hot flashes. Seniors, 55 plus. Oh my God, it's like seniors. That's like not far from, when you're like, oh my God. I always thought senior was like, 70. Like, I swear they keep making, I know I'm getting closer to those ages. I swear they're bringing them closer to me. Anyway, so over 55, gentle protocols, 12-12 for cognitive health and inflammation reduction, avoid prolonged fast to prevent muscle loss. And actually, if you're over 55, you need to make sure that you're increasing your protein intake, definitely reduce your carbohydrates. You will lose protein at a higher rate, and your metabolism has shifted, especially if you're female, the way that your hormones have changed working. So make sure you are increasing your protein, right? So I have a flexible 80% carnivore diet, because you do still need fiber. You do still need, nobody wants to be clogged, right? Nobody wants that. We as ancestrally, we had access to berries, all those things are good for you, right? So, and when I say carnivore, I don't mean just meat, I mean like animal-based products. So an 80% animal-based product diet is very beneficial if you are over 55, like really beneficial. Like plant protein, like bullshit, like it's not, but there are something like, so Brazil nuts have got like shitloads of fucking selenium in, and they're easy to consume compared to having to get it from salmon. Like I couldn't eat salmon every single day, but I can have like 1 or 2 Brazil nuts every single day, right? But their nuts are really high in fat, so fat's good, fat's not bad, but they're really kind of like calorific. So just be careful if you're kind of like eating nuts. And my go-to nuts, berries outside of meat. I've never enjoyed vegetables other than potatoes, and I know potatoes aren't great. But actually, if you cook a potato, then cool it, and then like reheat it, they're actually pretty good for you. So, but they're still not great. I get it. But Matt sort like since I've like me and Matt have been together since I was 17. Like Salad Dodger has been my nickname, and I was ecstatic to find out that actually they're really bad for you. So that's fine. Okay, so over 55, so 12-12, avoid prolonged fast to prevent muscle loss. Studies show modest weight benefits, but monitor your nutrients. So how are we going to get started? Consult and start slow. So it's so consult the AI and tell it to give you the research. So I know I've spoken quickly through those things, but hopefully you've managed to retain a little bit of information that's going to enable you to start the conversation and get the research for yourself. Begin with the 12-12 and move forward. Tip number 2, stay hydrated and electrolyte balance. And this is not what I did. So this is what I'm going to do the next time I go for a 72-hour. Drink plenty of water, add morning elixir like cucumber slices, a pinch of salt, and a capful of apple cider vinegar. Now, make sure when you're using apple cider vinegar, you're drinking it through a straw, because it can completely obliterate the enamel in your teeth, and nobody wants that. It boosts hydration, gut health, and keeps you fasted. So the salt, and use pink Himalayan salt. Don't use just table salt. Table salt's shit. Tip number 3, focus on nutrient-dense meals. So in your eating windows, prioritize proteins, fats, and then your teeny tiny little portion of, if you need some fiber and the extra stuff. Break your fast gently with a bone broth if you're doing intermittent fasting. Number 4, listen to your body. If you're hungry or fatigued, shorten the fast, and pair with movement for better results. And then track your progress, right? So maybe you aim for 72 hours if you want to go for it, and maybe you do 25, right? So give yourself a minimum window, and then go, and then next time you do 25 and a half, and then you do like 27. I believe in you. I believe in your success. I believe you're awesome. We can absolutely use these tools to enable us to think more critically. Please don't shit yourself with the conversation we just had. The world is not ended. There may be 2 billion Muslims, but that means there is 6 billion non-Muslims, right? And not all of them are bad. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I shall